Hello everyone, I'm Professor Toybox.
I'm Queen Elsa.
And we'd like to welcome you back to my Frozen Toy Box, where I'm building a winter festival. So far, I've been working on recreating the Kingdom of Arendelle in my toy box, and now after 3 build videos, I'm finally ready to start adding some games. The first thing I want to do is go snowboarding down this mountain, so I'm going to build a slalom course today. I've already got a ski lodge set up over here, using Oaken's Trading Center as the basis for this. And the first thing we're going to need is a snowboard. So we're going to come in here and drop a couple of creative toys. I'm going to put down a button, and I'm going to put down an object generator. We'll put that right here, and we'll just go ahead and quickly hook this up so that when the button is pressed, we come over here to our packs and tools, and we drop the hoverboard. This is the closest thing we have to a snowboard or a set of skis, and so that's what we'll have to work with here. So we'll come over here and push the button, and that gives us our hoverboard. And when you press X on the Wii U...
Whoa! What magic is this?
So the next thing we need is the course. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. I can use that kind of gate right there, which would be the racing gate here underneath the Creativa Toys. And I can drop these down and set up a bunch of those, and they work. They don't look much like slalom gates though. Usually you see the flags on either side of that. And so I'm going to set up my own custom gates for this, kind of similar to what I did with the flight games, the jet race and the flight games video. And so I've already taken the liberty of putting down some gates, and I've already skied this several times, and I know where the gates go, and I can make those gates and the transitions and easily get down to the bottom of the hill. And so I've already set those up, and I left the last one up here to use as an example. And so I'll go ahead and show you how I did that. So basically I placed the racing gates and used those as markers to kind of run the course. I didn't really hook them up, but that let me kind of see if I could run through it and make the turns and that sort of thing. So I just come up here and resize the trigger area to kind of match the gate, like so. And then come in here and delete the racing gate. And that gives me the trigger areas for all of those locations. And as you notice, I don't have the flags set up yet. So I think the first thing I want to do is I'm going to put the flags down using a replayer. And I want to do that because I don't think I want the flags in here all the time. I think just when I'm doing this race. And there's a couple of other pieces I want to put down as well. And so the first thing we're going to do is drop the replayer here, and we'll step onto it and hit B to record and step off so I can get back into the drawer. And the first thing I'm going to put down are a couple of racetrack pieces. And the first one's going to go right here, because there's a couple of different ways I could go potentially with this. If I were going to run through here and didn't happen to notice those flags. So if we put this down here, that kind of directs us around this corner. Those trees will handle that. And then over here, we're going to put down another one just to kind of direct them down toward the finish line in town there. And I'm going to set this down about like so. And I think that's on the ground. The shadow there is a little misleading. And now that we have those guides down, we'll go ahead and put down the flags. And there's a couple of different ones I can use. We can use this ESPN flag out of the sports toys drawer. And that would look pretty good. That would look like what you'd see in the Olympics or some other kind of a race course. It doesn't really fit the theme here, which is the Frozen. Several hundred years back, but that would work. I'm actually going to use, out of building group 7, this frozen specific flag here. And I'm going to put one of each of these down. And I think that will look a little bit better and be a little bit taller and more noticeable on these slopes. And so I'm going to go ahead and put these on each and every one of these trigger areas here. And I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I've got all of the flags in now, all the way down to the bottom. So we'll come back over to the replayer and we'll step on and hit B to stop. And I'm going to go ahead and press A to clear. And that shows you that we've got the flags hooked in. So now when I just want to ski this for fun and not necessarily race, the flags will not be there. And if I want to race, I can come over here and hit playback on this. And the flags show up. And one thing I think I'm going to do is I had originally sized these trigger areas based on the racing gates, and I think I'm going to go ahead and raise these up and make them match the height of the flags. And part of the reason for that is sometimes when you ride a hoverboard onto a downslope, it doesn't actually follow the contour of the slope. It just keeps going at the same height. And I'll demonstrate this here so that you can see what I mean. I didn't do it that time. But there are times when, like that, you can see that it dropped down a little bit, but then it stayed up at the same height. So I'm actually quite a ways up above the surface of the ground. And this can be a problem if I'm trying to slalom through these gates and the hoverboard doesn't drop like I expect it to. So making the gates a little bit taller will make this a little bit more forgiving if that happens to the player during the race. So I'm going to go ahead and make these trigger areas a little bit taller, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I've adjusted the height of all of these gates, and I think we're ready now to start building the slalom challenge. So I'm going to come back over here to the drawers, and first thing we're going to need is a challenge maker. So I'm going to put that over here. And we're also going to need a timer. So we'll scroll over here and pick that up. And I've already got the trigger areas and the replayer. And I'm also going to need a logic gate. We're going to need one of these for each of these gates here. And for right now, I'll just drop these down. And before this is all done, I'll move these out of the way behind the terrain or below the terrain. And I'll put the rest of these down offline. And that should be all of the creativitoys that we need. So these gates are going to work similar to the ones in my jet race, as I had mentioned before. And so what's going to happen is each of these gates is responsible for doing 3 things. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have each gate activate the next one. So when the player enters this gate, and I'm going to set this up to be a single player race, but any player could go through this if player 1's running it or player 2. So we'll have any player entering it. We'll come in here to the next gate and activate it. And the second thing the gate needs to do is when entered by player any, we need to have it deactivate itself. So we're going to come over to this logic gate that goes with it. We'll input into that gate. And on output, we'll come over to the trigger area and deactivate it. And again, I have to use the logic gate because I can't turn around and have this connect back to itself. And the other thing I want to do is play a sound to let the player know that they've managed to pass through that gate correctly. And so on the gate, when entered by player any, We're going to come over to the sound generator, and I believe it's under General, and I'm looking for the ding. That worked pretty well on the jet race. There we go. So that'll play. And so you'll pass through the gate, it'll make a sound, it'll activate the next gate for you and deactivate itself. And each of the gates are going to do those exact same 3 things until you get down to the very last gate, which is going to be a little bit different, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'll set the rest of these gates up offline, but first we'll go ahead and set up the rest of this challenge. So on the challenge maker, we want to come into Properties, and I don't want to auto start this. The results score label is going to be in time. And I think the rest of those are all fine. Again, I can't set that. The challenge type, I'm going to leave this so that if I wanted to, I could ride Sven down through these gates or the hoverboard or go on foot or however I want to do that. So then on new logic connection, on, let's see, invites accepted, we want to come over to the timer, and we want to start the timer. And for the timer, go ahead and set those properties while we're here. The target time, we're going to set this to the maximum that we can set it to, which is 999. Visible display is good. And we're actually not going to count down. I want to count up, so we'll set that to off. Okay. And then new logic connection. When the game is ended, we want to come back over to the timer and pause it. And on new logic connection, when the results are closed at the very end, we'll come back over here and reset the timer. So that takes care of the timer portion of this. Next thing we'll do is, when the invites are accepted, I want to come over to the replayer and do playback, and that will turn on all of these racing gate flags and the curved pieces down there from the racetrack. And likewise, when the results are closed, we could do this on game ended, but I think on results closed, I'll go ahead and clear these at that point. So that takes care of the replayer. Now for the trigger areas, initially, we want to make sure on invites accepted that this first one is set active. And then all of the rest of these on invites accepted, we want to go through and deactivate them. So we want the player to have to run these gates in order. And if they miss one, we don't want them going down here and running through the next gate. They're going to have to come back up here and run through this gate before they continue onward. And so I'll go ahead and do that offline and deactivate all of those gates as well after I get everything else set up. So each of the gates are doing 3 things. They're all going to be deactivated initially except this first one. And then the last gate is going to work similar to all of these, except instead of activating the next gate, because there is no next gate, this last trigger area is going to have to complete the game and tell the challenge maker that we're finished. And I've actually got 2 things set up here. I've got the racing gate here, and I've got a trigger area. And I'm actually going to use the trigger area, but I'm going to leave this racing gate here because I think that kind of makes a nice finish line graphic. Just let the player know that's the end of the race. So on this trigger area, though, when it's entered by player any, we need to tell the challenge maker that we're finished. And so we'll come back up over here to the challenge maker and complete the game. And when the game is over, I want to show the time results to the player. So we'll come back over here and link that to the timer, and that will show them their time. So now that's pretty much everything that we need to set up, but I need to go through and set up all of these gates so that they activate the next one and play the sound and deactivate themselves when the player runs through them. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I've got each of the trigger areas set up so that each trigger area will activate the next one when the player passes through it. It'll also go through this logic gate and deactivate itself, and it comes over to the sound generator and plays the ding sound. One of the things I forgot to do last time, though, on the sound generator is to come under Properties and turn off the 3D sound at Speaker or Locator. And that way we can hear the ding sound no matter where we are on the course or which gate we're running through. Another thing I've done is dropped the level starter over here. And on the level starter, I've done a new logic connection on Catalyze for each of the gates. And you come in and deactivate those gates. And I did that for all of the gates except this first one here, just so I could demonstrate what I did. But basically the level starter now will deactivate all of the gates when you first come in here, so I can run up this hill without the ding sound playing. And the challenge maker is set up to deactivate all of the gates on invites accepted, except for the first gate here, which it activates. So that is complete. The level starter, the last thing I want to do with this is on catalyzing, when the player first comes in, I'd like to come down to this little racing gate down here that I'm using for the finish line. And I should probably turn that off by default. So we'll come in here, let's see. It's kind of tough to select it. Very sensitive for whatever reason. And I want to make sure I deactivate that for all players when we first come in, so that's not showing that little light beam across it. And the challenge maker should also come in here, and on a new logic connection on invites accepted, we should come turn that back on, because we'll want that on for the race. Let's see, where am I? Oh, not down far enough. There we go. And we'll activate that for all players when we start the race. And the other thing we could do, I could go all the way back to the challenge maker and have that deactivate the final racing gate at the end of the game. But since I'm right here, but I think I'd rather come in here, and when the player comes through this last gate, this last trigger area, at that point I can go ahead and turn off the beam. So there we go. At this point we're all set. And I think we're ready to run the course. Before we do, I'm going to go ahead and save my game. You just never know if something could go wrong while you're testing this, or what that might be. Always a good idea. Okay, what do you think, Elsa? You want to give this a try?
Why not? I'm here to have fun, right?
All right, let's go ahead and turn off and clear all the stuff that's putting down, because the challenge maker is going to put that down for us. And here we go. Let's give it a try. Oh, and I see one thing I forgot already. All right, a couple of things here that are wrong. So I'm going to come in and end the challenge. First of all, that timer started way too soon. And secondly, I don't want to start there. Oops. I want to start over by the starting line. So let's drop that down first. We'll put that locator down right here in front of the starting gate. We'll make sure this is turned the right way. Oops. Like that. New locator. And there we go. So that'll be the starting location. And then the other thing that I noticed was on the timer, it was starting on invites accepted, and I actually don't want to do that. So I'm going to delete that link because I want this to start when the game is actually started. To come in here and start the timer. There we go. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and try it again. That looks better. And the racing gates are up. Oop, I don't have my... Okay, one more thing. Yeah, I want to continue. Gotta have my hoverboard. I forgot I lost my hoverboard when I exited out of the level and restarted it because I had to make sure the level starter deactivated all these gates. Okay, here we go. Hopefully for real this time. Okay, away we go. So far so good. I'm hearing the sound as I'm passing through each gate. Whoa. Nice. Whoa. Whoa. That's what I was afraid of. Okay. Good thing we made that gate tall at the end. Excellent. And there's the final time. And there we go. Okay. So that was a success, I think. We were able to ski down the slope, and that worked out pretty well. I like how that played out. And now that gate's deactivated, and there we are. And now we're in town, and we can go and do something else. I hope you've enjoyed this video, despite the hiccups here at the end. I think the slalom course turned out pretty well. I'm really excited about it, and looking forward to trying to beat my time. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel or sign up on my blog to see what we do next time in this series. You can find build tips and logic diagrams on my blog as well for the different toy boxes and challenges that we make. And for now, this is Elsa and I signing off from Arendelle, and we'll see you next time.